Okay, is it all right?
Could hear you now, Bhante.
Ready to continue? Okay, so we're ready to start? Jason?
Mute your microphone. Mute your microphone. No, it's fine. Mute your microphone.
Yes, Bande.
Okay, so I'm... Okay, so it's all right now. Okay, so then we will start. So I will start with the homage to the Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Okay, so good morning, everybody. And now we are ready to begin this 4-day retreat on contemplation of the body, which will be based on the first section of the Satipatthana Sutta, the section on Kayanupassana, contemplation of the body. And as I mentioned earlier, just in this first session, I'll be giving an overview of the retreat, and then we will move into the meditation. So I'm going to share a different screen now. Oh, so this document that I've just loaded shows the structure of the Satipatthana Sutta. So this gives us a broad overview of the entire practice laid out in the Satipatthana Sutta. So from within this broad framework, we can see where contemplation of the body fits in and why it is placed in the position that it occupies. So we have in the Satipatthana Sutta mention of 4 domains of mindfulness, 4 objective spheres of mindfulness. And corresponding to that, 4 ways of setting up mindfulness in regard to those 4 domains. So we have contemplation of the body, contemplation of feeling, contemplation of mind, which means the state of mind. And then the 4th is a very broad category called contemplation of dharmas. It's difficult to come up with any adequate translation of this, but the way I explained it are groups of phenomena organized in accordance with the progression, you could say with the aim and progression of the Buddha's teaching. So let us see what's included within each of these contemplations. So traditionally it's said that the contemplation of the body includes 14 exercises, but actually the last 9 are really variations on a single principle. So we could say that in effect, there are actually 6 types of contemplation. So we have mindfulness of breathing, then knowledge of the postures, that is being aware when walking, standing, sitting, and lying down, the 4 main postures, and then being aware of the body in whatever other position it might be situated, and aware of the body when making the change from one posture to another. Then we have something called, or a practice called mindfulness in clear comprehension, which means engaging in all of the different activities of one's everyday life with mindfulness and with a clear understanding of what one is doing and why one is doing it. Then we have the meditation on the unattractive or unbeautiful nature of the body in terms of the 32 components of the body, meditation on the 4 primary physical elements, and then the 6th is conveniently called the charnel ground contemplations, which are meditations on the dead body's disintegration or decomposition. And this is shown in the Pali Sutta as occurring in 9 stages. But really, it's really just, you could bring them all together under one theme, which is the disintegration of the body after death. So all of these form the contemplation of the body. And contemplation of feeling is noticing, observing, perceiving what we can call the felt tone or the felt quality of experience. And this occurs in the sutta in terms of 2 main stages. First, one notes the distinct quality of the feeling itself as being pleasant, painful, or neutral. And then one goes a step further by distinguishing whether the feeling is worldly, tending to attachment or aversion, we could say, or a uplifting spiritual feeling, one which leads one deeper towards concentration and insight, and ultimately towards detachment. So that is contemplation of feeling. Then the 3rd foundation of mindfulness is contemplation of mind, the citta, which is the state of mind. And mind itself is something that very, very difficult to observe the actual mind itself, because mind is colorless, flavorless, shapeless. But the way one distinguishes the state of mind is in terms of the associated factors, the factors associated with the mind. So in the Satipatthana Sutta, 16 mental states are enumerated, which are grouped into 8 pairs. The mind with lust, and then the mind that is temporarily freed from lust, the mind with aversion or ill will, and the mind released from ill will, the mind with delusion and without delusion, then the cramped or tight mind and the scattered mind. Then we have a progressive sequence, the developed mind and undeveloped mind, the surpassable mind and the unsurpassable mind, the concentrated mind and the unconcentrated mind, and the freed mind or liberated mind, and the bound mind or unliberated mind. So this is the contemplation of states of mind. Okay, then we come to the fourth group, the contemplation of dharmas, which, as I said, are groups of phenomena that have been organized in accordance with the progression and aim of the Buddha's teachings. So we could actually see two groups within this foundation of mindfulness that are paired off against each other. That is the 5 hindrances, which are the impediments to progress in meditation, the impediments to deepening of concentration and insight, the impediments to realization, and then the 7 factors of enlightenment, which are the factors that assist or promote progress towards realization, and at their peak, they're the factors that constitute the experience of enlightenment itself. So these two are paired off against each other as sort of opposites, which the task is to overcome and to at least temporarily suppress the 5 hindrances, and then to arouse, cultivate, strengthen, and mature the 7 factors of enlightenment. And when the 7 factors of enlightenment come to maturity, then they bring the realization, the penetration of the 4 Noble Truths. Okay, but when one is developing the 7 factors of enlightenment with the aim of cultivating insight, aiming to reach the stages of insight knowledge, this has to be done by examining the constituents of experience, the components of experience. And the components of experience are grouped together into two sets. One is the 5 aggregates, the aggregates of bodily form, feeling, perception, the mental activities, and consciousness. And then another way of dividing up the domain of experience is in terms of the 6 pairs of sense bases: the eye and visible forms, ear and sounds, nose and odors, tongue and tastes, the body and tactile objects, and the mental faculty or mind faculty and mental objects. So those are 2 ways of sort of gathering together the factors of experience in order to contemplate them and to be able to penetrate the real nature of experience. And that penetration takes place through applying mindfulness to these groups. And when mindfulness is applied, mindfulness becomes the first of the 7 factors of enlightenment, which, when they all arise together and operate together, bring the penetration of the 4 Noble Truths, the attainment of the world transcending paths and the fruits of realization. Okay, so that is the broad terrain laid out in the Satipatthana Sutta. But in our retreat, which is just 4 days, to cover all 4 Satipatthanas, one would need ideally at least 2 weeks, better a month, 6 weeks, 2 months, 3 months. But in our 4 days, we will be doing kind of cursory examination or exploration of contemplation of the body. And you could see there are various exercises in the contemplation of the body. And all of the exercises in contemplation of the body, we could say, branch out from mindfulness of breathing, which is sometimes said to be the root meditation object. And the way I look at these set of 6 practices included in contemplation of the body, I divide them, and this is my own interpretation, into 2 broad sets. Maybe I'll color these. Okay. So I see the first 2 sets, or the first 2 practices, which make up the first set. The primary intention is to establish what I would call presence. That is, to be present with one's experience as it is actually occurring in its immediacy. So here the stress is on developing mindfulness itself. Mindfulness in the sense of awareness of the present moment. Awareness established in and upon one's present experience. And so the mindfulness of breathing is the most, let's say, the most intensive way to develop that present moment experience, because the breath is only occurring in the present. And so when we are aware of the breath, then our awareness, our mindfulness, our attention becomes anchored, established in the present. Then knowledge of the postures means being aware of whatever posture the body has taken up, when walking, standing, sitting, and lying down. So here again, the emphasis is being aware in the present of one's present posture. And this exercise again helps to establish mindfulness, to anchor it, to root mindfulness in the present. Then, in order to keep the mind well drawn in, well protected, to keep it steady and firm and not let it get scattered when one leaves the meditative situation to engage in one's various everyday activities, there comes what is called mindfulness and clear comprehension, which means being aware of what one is doing as one is doing it, knowing what one is doing and why one is doing it in every little activity of everyday life. Later we can look at the sutta on this passage. Now I'm just treating it in a general way. And this practice, I would say, perhaps also we should include this in the heading of establishing presence, though it also serves to some extent as a bridge between the 2 sets. So maybe we could put both colors in. Okay, so being mindful in one's various activities, that aspect of presence, of being aware of what one is doing, that belongs to the side of establishing presence. And knowing what one is doing and why one is doing it belongs to the second group, in which the emphasis shifts to developing understanding, even leading towards insight. So here we have the contemplation of the unattractive nature of the body, which we'll be taking up later. The meditation on the, so this helps to dispel the illusion or the superficial appearance of beauty and attractiveness in the body by revealing the actual depth, in-depth nature of the body. When one examines the body in detail in terms of its organic or anatomical constituents, and then the meditation on the four physical elements, the four material elements, serves to dispel the illusion of substantiality and solidity in regard to the body, the grasping of the body as being a solid, a solid and substantial self. And then the 9 charnel ground contemplations focusing on the body's disintegration at death helps to dispel the illusion of permanence, lastingness of the body, and shows the impermanent nature of the body and generates a strong disenchantment towards the body, leading to dispassion and liberation. Okay, so this is the broad overview of what we'll be covering over the next 4 days. And now we're going to get into our actual practice in the practice that we'll be doing in the course of this day, today. Today we'll be focusing on the mindfulness of breathing. And as I said, this is the way of centering the awareness, anchoring awareness in the present through moment by moment attention to the breath. Okay, so to start this, let us take our accustomed, familiar meditation position. Maybe let us just take 1 minute to stand up and stretch before doing the sitting meditation. So you can get up. Yes, the water will be helpful. Okay, thank you. Okay, good. Okay, so we could stand up. And then do whatever stretching, bending and stretching you prefer. Okay, we come back to our seats. Okay, now you could take your preferred sitting position. As usual, we try to establish a firm base formed by the buttocks against the seat, the hips and the pelvic region, the support of the legs, in the case of most of us sitting on a mat with the knees against the mat. Keep the torso, the upper part of the body, straight and upright, but not stiff or rigid. Let the weight of the torso be supported by the pelvic region and the buttocks against the seat. Hands could be placed on the lap, right hand over the left hand, thumbs lightly touching. If you prefer, you can also keep the hands on the knees. Nose perpendicular to the navel. Mouth closed. Eyes closed. Head held first as if you're looking straight ahead, but then you can pull in the chin just a very slight angle. And then begin, don't jump immediately onto the breath, but first settle the awareness in the body. Trying to take in what I call a global sense of the body, total awareness of the body. And just settle into that present awareness of the body in the sitting position. Then as you are aware of the body, you'll experience that the body is breathing. breathing in and out on its own. And the object of our attention, of our mindfulness, will be the breathing process itself. So you can choose whichever area enables you to experience the breath most clearly and distinctly. For some, it might be around the nostrils and upper lip. Or it could be where you feel the breath coming in and going out. Or it could be the expansion and contraction of the chest as you're breathing in and breathing out. Or it could be the rising and falling of the abdomen as you're breathing in and breathing out. You can experiment in whichever region you find stands out most clearly. That's where you settle your attention. And you try to follow each breath, each in-breath, each out-breath, as continuously and consistently as possible. And to help you keep your mind on the breath as you're breathing in and breathing out, you can make the light mental note, background note. When breathing in, the note mindful, in. When breathing out, the note mindful, out. Or if you prefer, simply the note in, or out. If you're settled on the abdomen, rising and falling, you could use the mental notes rising, and the note falling. As you're trying to attend to the breath, naturally thoughts, memories, plans, worries will arise. But just let them come and let them pass through the mind and let them go. Coming back again and again to the felt experience of the breath in the present, in the present moment. In breath, out breath, in breath, out breath. But if you've discovered that you've lost track of the breath and you're wandering along the avenues of thought, as soon as you recognize this, make the mental observation, the mental note, thinking, or wandering. Then don't try to jump right back onto the breath, but first come back to the body, the felt sense of the body, and then settle. When the attention is settled back in the body, then let the awareness of the breath arise on its own. Okay, let us continue now in silence until the end of the session. Occasionally I'll make some observations to sort of spur you along, but let's practice in silence. Mindful when breathing in, one nose breathing in. When breathing out, one nose breathing out. The place where the mind tends to run away from the breath is in the juncture between the in-breath and the out-breath, and the juncture between the out-breath and the in-breath. It's in that split second between the two phases, in-breath and out-breath, that your mindfulness tends to go a little slack. And with that slackening of the mindfulness, the mind will run off in thoughts. So be especially vigilant where the in-breath comes to an end and where the out-breath comes to an end. And what helps to keep the continuity of the mindfulness is the use of the mental noting. When breathing in, one makes the mental note mindful, in. When breathing out, one makes the mental note mindful, out, out, out. But the mental note should be in the background, and the focus should be on the felt experience of the breath itself, the breath coming in and going out. And remember that if you completely lose track of the breath, and then you recognize this, you don't try to jump immediately onto the breath, because then the mind will start running away again and again. But first, settle the mind or the mindfulness into the body, the felt sense of the body, until the experience of the breath coming in and out arises on its own. Then return to the mindful observation of the in and out breathing. Okay, now you can relax your posture. And to end the session, well, first you can mindfully open the eyes. And to end the session, we rub the palms together. So make them a bit warm. Then rub the palms over the face, top of the head, back of the head, back of the neck, including the shoulders, shoulder blades. Then come down the lower back to the buttocks. And you could massage the buttocks a bit to stimulate the circulation. Then you come down to the knees. And again, you can massage the knees. And then if you've been sitting on a mat, you could come down to the feet and massage the feet and the toes. Okay, now we're going to do a session of the walking meditation. And I always want to emphasize again and again that the walking meditation is just so important. People sometimes think, the only real meditation is when you're sitting. Walking is just for weaklings, not for the real meditators. But no, the walking meditation is so important for maintaining that presence of mindfulness in activity. It's sort of the bridge for carrying mindfulness from the sitting position into one's everyday life. And it's also a very powerful tool in itself for developing samadhi, the Buddha emphasizes this, and insight. Okay, so how do we do the walking meditation? So you choose a little stretch within your living quarters of about, could be 15 to 20 paces, and that will be your walkway, like a little alleyway for walking back and forth. And if you don't have that much space to carve out an alley for walking back and forth, you could try to walk in a circle in your room or living quarters. The key in doing the walking meditation is to be mindful of each step that you take. When we walk, we take right step, left step, right step, left step, and we want to be mindful of the entire process of walking. And the way I suggest doing this is to be mindful of each step in two phases. There's the step of pushing the foot forward and putting the foot down. So we label these pushing and placing. So when you're taking the step itself, that's pushing. And when you are putting the foot down, that's placing. And when you place the foot down, you pay special attention to the feeling or touch sensation of the foot making contact with the ground. You don't have to walk in an artificially slow way, as is done in some of the Buddhist traditions or meditative traditions, but slower than normal walking, but not excessively slow. We call this kind of moderately slow walking. But what you're paying attention to is the step itself in these two phases of pushing, placing, pushing, placing. And so you have your starting point of the walkway. You walk each step, right step, left step, pushing, placing, till you come to the end of the walkway. When you come to the end, you make the mental note, stopping, stopping. Then you stand in place. You make the mental note, standing, standing, and hold the body in the standing position just for a few seconds, attending to the body, standing. Then mindfully you turn around, making the mental note turning. Usually for me it takes 3 or 4 turns, turning, until you're facing the opposite direction. Then you make the mental note standing, and then you walk back to the starting point. Pushing, placing, pushing, placing, pushing, placing. When you come to the starting point, again you make the mental note stopping. Then you hold the body still. You make the mental note standing. Then turn around, turning. Then standing. Then you walk back. And so we will do this for, let us say, we'll do this about 20 minutes. And then when you hear the bell, then you come back to your seat. Let's say 10:45, you should be back in your seat. And then we'll do another session of the mindfulness of breathing. Testing 1, 2, 3.
Yes, Bante, we can hear you.
Okay, you could return to your meditation seats now, and we will continue with another session of the mindfulness of breathing. This will be a 40 minutes session till 11:25. Again, the method of practice is exactly the same. You choose your preferred post of observation, place where you're observing the breath, either around the nostrils and upper lip, or the expansion and contraction of the chest, or the rising and falling of the abdomen. First, you settle into the general feeling, the global feeling of the body. Settle the mindfulness, establish the mindfulness in the body, in the body. And when you feel that the mindfulness is well established, you let the awareness of the breath rise up on its own at your preferred post of observation, making the mental note mindful in, mindful out, or mindful rising, mindful falling at the abdomen. And thoughts will naturally arise, memories, hopes, fears, worries, expectations, and so on. But just let them come and let them go. It's just the natural way that the mind works. But your task is to try to come back again and again to the felt experience of the breath in the immediate present, keeping the mind on the breath as continuously and consistently as possible. But don't push the mind onto the breath with a kind of tight, constricted frame of mind. But the mind or mindfulness should be soft and gentle, but alert and observant. Soft and alert and persistently present. if you find yourself just following the in-breath and out-breath in a rather mechanical and automatic way, without being fully mindful of the breath, what you can do is to challenge yourself with each in-breath. Set up the challenge, mindful, I breathe in, in. And then with the out-breath, challenge yourself with the thought, mindful, I will breathe out, out, out. By challenging yourself, you break the kind of complacent, automatic following of the breath, and you set up a keen, constant, mindful attention to the breath. And I make that observation because I myself have found that I'm starting to slip into a kind of automatic following of the in and out breath. Okay, you can relax your posture now. And again, end the session by rubbing the palms together, and rubbing them first over the face, top of the head, back of the head, back of the neck, then down the lower back to the buttocks, then down the thighs to the knees, and then down to the feet and the toes. So we're going to break now for the meal. And as I said, I wrote on the website, for those who want to take maximum advantage of this retreat, even though you're living at home, you're not at the monastery or retreat center, but try to maintain to the best of your ability the same conditions as if you were living at a retreat center or a monastery. Hopefully you will have, if you're living with family members, they will understand. And if you don't engage in conversation, they won't think you're being rude or antisocial. Try to maintain silence to the best of your ability and perform every action with mindfulness and sampajanya, clear comprehension. And now I want to give you specific, clear comprehension work when you're taking the meal. Don't just eat casually the way we normally do, but apply mindfulness to the act of eating, and it will help to divide the process of eating the food down into, I think, 5 stages. First, when you have the food in front of you, there is taking the food, whether you're using a spoon, a fork, chopsticks, or the South Asian way, using the fingers. You're taking the food and bringing it up to the mouth. Then the next stage, putting in or ingesting, taking the food into the mouth. So you're mindful of that. Then chewing, mindful of chewing. Then when the taste arises, mindful of tasting. And when swallowing, mindful of swallowing. So taking, putting in, chewing, tasting, swallowing. Okay, so try that in the course of the meal. Okay, so we will end now. We can end with 3 half bows to the Buddha, and then we can go for the meal, and then we come back. I believe it's 2 p.m. for the afternoon session. Yeah, we'll resume at 2 p.m. in the afternoon. So please be in your seat, certainly by 2 p.m. And if you want to continue practicing, say you take a little rest after the meal, but if you want to continue practicing, you could start again from 1:30 to 2. But that's optional. Okay, so we will do the 3 half bows. Do you have the chime? Okay.